Hello and welcome to the UT Energy Week 2021. The theme for this year's conference is Energy Transition, Agents of Change, Changing Agents. We have over 850 participants that will join over the next 2 days. Many thanks to everyone from across the US and the world for taking the time to join in on an important set of discussions. The energy transition, which is achieving a sustainable and just global energy system, is already underway, and efforts to reach to net zero globally by 2050 will require an unprecedented rate and scale of change to our energy infrastructure in a way that will profoundly rewrite global socioeconomics. Over the last decade, many business, government, and community leaders and organizations, the agents of change, if you will, have initiated and led this ongoing transformation. And in turn, their own views, priorities, commitments, and determination to go down this unprecedented journey have evolved and are continuously shaped by global changes in health, politics, technology, and civic engagement. If we can bring the first slide up. In the discussions at Energy Week 2021, over the next 2 days, we will explore and learn more about the intertwined dynamics of how leaders and organizations in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors balance the complex suite of pulls and pushes to position their organizations and communities to not only lead in the energy transition, but also become more equitable and resilient in the process. The slide that you're seeing is actually from the event last year. Normally, UT Energy Week is an outstanding in-person gathering of leading thinkers, decision makers, entrepreneurs, and most importantly, hundreds of students from UT and other universities. We were fortunate last year to be able to meet in person, and hopefully we will be able to regroup in person again in 2022. In the meantime, all the discussions this year are virtual, but we hope that you will find the content and discussion of equally great quality in a way that will challenge your understanding and spark new ideas. Next slide, please. As we begin our discussions, let me first point out that deep decarbonization is not an option. It is a necessity. And it boils down to global emissions of greenhouse gases going down to net zero by 2050. There are many models out there that can give you a sense of the scale and scope involved. Recently, we at UT Austin built an online dashboard that anyone can work with to explore their own vision for the future of the energy system. But no matter which tool or model you use, one thing is common. The scale, scope, and rapidity of the necessary changes are unprecedented, all-encompassing, and truly daunting. It's a necessary change, but a difficult one, and it's important to acknowledge that. Success in addressing this global challenge will require coordination and alignment across markets, governments, and cultures. That's a theme we want to explore at this conference. How is that alignment and coordination happening, and how to make it more effective, efficient, and fast? Next slide, please. The type of energy transition we are talking about involves shifts in patterns of energy use in the entire society. It is very large in scale and scope. Over the last 10 to 15 years, scholars have made great progress in understanding the drivers of energy transition, challenges involved with them, and interventions that can accelerate them. In our first panel after these opening remarks, we will hear more about what's really entailed in energy transitions and what do we know from the past. Next slide. One thing we do know from the past energy transitions is that larger the scope of change, the longer it takes. And that's partly because there are a diverse set of actors and institutions involved. Many of them have competing ideas, and there's lots of inertia in the system. There is need for integration with other parts of the system as well. We will spend a lot of time over the next 2 days understanding where these diverse set of actors and institutions are coming from and how they're interacting as competitors and as collaborators to fast forward the ongoing energy transition. Next slide. One thing that is going to be involved is deploying technology and infrastructure very rapidly and at very large scale. We have already talked about that. With careful design and coordination, it is possible to do so. But without that, it is also possible to screw it up in a way that isn't efficient or effective. In particular, if policy, regulatory, and technological uncertainties are not resolved in sync, costs of capital-intensive technologies may not automatically come down with larger scale. And there is precedence in history about this, where in times costs have actually gone up and not down. So the normal learning by doing and experience curve experiences were actually different in certain parts of the energy system during certain parts of the history. We will hear from industry leaders in both energy and finance sectors about what we need to do to avoid these critical mistakes. Next slide. Clearly, it's not just about technologies and policies. This is going to be a deep change, and that involves transformed social norms, public engagement, and public participation, which all become very, very critical. Transitions as deep as we are talking about, they cannot be sustained without broad social buy-in and support. At this conference, we will discuss how to go about achieving such broad social support. It is very important and something we all, when we discuss these issues, we start focusing on the technologies and the technological pathways and investments. It is also very important to keep in mind that we are talking about multi-decadal, long-term, deep shift, and our people, societies, communities need to understand what it is entailed and need to be firmly behind it in order for us to sustain it. So we'll spend a lot of time thinking about that. Next slide. In this vein, I would like to draw your attention to the National Academy's Committee on Accelerating Decarbonization of the US Energy System. This committee, which I am a member of, released first of its 2 reports earlier this year. You can download it from the link provided on this slide. In my view, one of the most distinguishing facets of this committee's work and of the report is that social and policy aspects of the transition are front and center and not an afterthought. It focuses very importantly on technologies and technological pathways, economics and timelines, but it also focuses very, very importantly on the social aspects and how do we bring in our people in the discussion, at the center of it, rather. Next slide, please. In particular, the report heavily underscores that decarbonization policies must ensure a fair and equitable transition with public participation in decision-making, emphasizing both processes and outcomes of the clean energy transition, and asking that the diverse communities with a stake in this transition be treated fairly and equitably. It becomes so important. Otherwise, with political and investment cycles of 4, 5, 10 years, it is not going to be possible to sustain something this deep, this long, and across the world. So it's a very important set of work, and I do invite you to please take a look. If we go to the next slide, as you can see, this committee is very broad. It's led by Stephen Pacala of Princeton University. And many of the leaders in this committee actually focus on social injustice issues, and we'll have the opportunity to hear from several of them over the next 2 days. Next slide. I am thrilled to be leading the UT Energy Institute during this very important juncture in the history of energy. We at UT are taking a multifaceted, integrated approach to fueling a sustainable energy transition. The depth and breadth of research and innovation of our faculty and researchers enable UT to take a very balanced view of the global energy system. I have been at UT almost 11 years now, and I've spent time, in many other parts of this country and the world. And the range and understanding of energy issues and the acknowledgement that the complexities that are involved is really very unique, and it's really amazing to be at a discussion where people are understanding of of different viewpoints. And I get to see that, experience that on a daily, on a weekly basis here, and I really appreciate that. And we need more of that, where for these types of changes at the scale, it cannot be this side of the spectrum of that or that side of the spectrum, rather coming together and really solving the issues together as one. I invite you to visit our website and explore our various initiatives, collaborative and pioneering projects, and important discussions on difficult but critical issues. We have lots of different material, reports, lots of videos, slides, just name it, it's all there on the resource. So please do come and visit our website. Next slide. Before we head into our first panel, I will just say how thrilled we are to be presenting to you an extraordinary set of speakers from across the spectrum of the energy world. I am fortunate to know all the speakers personally, and I know how much thought and effort they put on every single day in their own work, in their own organizations. But I also know that they don't always agree with each other. But that's the purpose of this conference, to bring these diverse voices in a respectful and open-minded setting, to offer an integrated picture of the state of the energy system today and how we can shape the ongoing clean energy transition as we move forward. Lastly, I strongly encourage you to drop in at the Student Research Poster Competition this evening starting at 5 p.m. US Central Time. The competition is run by the Longhorn Energy Club and includes participation by students across different disciplines. And something I would like to just point out that right after this, we'll get into 2 panel discussions back to back. And after that, there is a half an hour break. And then we'll come back again today for 2 more panel discussions. So a total of 4 panel discussions today. At the end of those panel discussions, we will have the student poster session also this evening, as I mentioned. And then tomorrow morning, we actually start at 9:30 US Central. We have a longer panel, that's the beginning panel in the morning. That's about the energy leadership in unprecedented times. That's a 90-minute panel, after which we have an hour-long break. And then we come back for the final 2 panels tomorrow morning. So those will be on financing the transition, basically how not to break the bank. And then the last panel will be on philanthropy. And then we'll wrap up. So, just please take note of some of the timings and durations of the break. It's not consistent across the both days, and that's the reason I did want to point that out to you. With that, I welcome you all once again to UT Energy Week 2021. I really hope you enjoyed the discussions and take back some thoughts and ideas that you will put in your own work, and together we can hopefully make this transition both successful, but then in also a very fair, just, and equitable manner, and in a timely fashion, which is very important. So with that, let's head into the first panel on energy transition, past, present, and future.